Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. My name is Griffin. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at All Day Packers. And I'm joined today by my co-host Bron. You can follow him at Lambo Leapers. We're missing Mason today. Couldn't make it for the recording, but we're gonna two-man this. Me and Bron. How you doing, Bron?
I'm doing great. Rough loss last week, but we're moving forward. Looking to go 1-0 this week against the Panthers. How you doing, Griff?
I'm doing pretty good as well. And today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing the pretty brutal defeat to the Los Angeles Chargers last Sunday. We were just outmatched in every single facet of the game. We're going to be looking ahead to this Sunday's matchup against the Carolina Panthers and Christian McCaffrey, who's balling right now, certainly in the MVP conversation. We're going to be talking about the offense, the defense, the state of the team, all things Packers on this Packers podcast. But first, we have some news to get to, as always. Safety Ibrahim Campbell was brought up to the 53-man roster earlier this week. He was on the physically unable to perform list. He's been there since August when we re-signed him. What are your thoughts on that, Bron?
Yeah, he's a guy that, he was a short tackler last year, probably the Packers' best tackling safety last year. And, he has a hard-hitting play style. He really does. He kind of thrives on being able to get low on guys and make tackles and try to create turnovers. But I think that he's going to see a pretty significant role this week, especially with our next piece of news about Adrian Amos. He might not be able to go this week. So I think he could either see that role where he comes in and plays alongside Darnell Savage, or if Amos is able to go, he could be in that that nickel corner role, that middle linebacker role next to Blake on passing downs, things like that. He can have an impact this week for sure.
Yeah, and I always say this, but he was, in my opinion, our best safety on the field at any point last year. He only played 3 games, and he only played significant time in 2 of those games. But he's something we didn't have at all last year, and that was someone who was reliable at the safety position. We could count on him to make tackles in the open field. We didn't have anyone doing that last year, and this year it seems like we don't have anyone either. The tackling has been very suspect this year, as it always seems to be in Green Bay. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I think it could be a huge boost to the defense. I mean, without Raven Green was put on IR after the Vikings game week 2, and we've kind of been searching for that dime linebacker spot to replace him with. And, we've tried different guys. We've tried Will Redmond. We've tried Chandon Sullivan, Adrian Amos sometimes, but we can never really have a guy that we could rely on like we could Raven Green. But I think Ibrahim Campbell can step in and kind of do a good job in his shoes and maybe even play better than Green was playing.
Yeah, and Green could even come back in a few weeks. We still have one remaining IR designation. Even at this Ibrahim Campbell, him coming back is just he's coming off the PUP list. We've already brought back Jay Sternberger from the IR, but we do have one more remaining spot, and it looks like if anybody, it's going to go to Raven Green or Lanes Haler. But yeah, Campbell, he's clearly the best tackler among the safeties that we have. Amos has been good tackling this year. He's made some nice tackles in the run game, in the pass game. Darnell Savage has struggled at times, and obviously Will Redmond as well, because they're both young players, and they're kind of adapting to the league still. But I do think that, Campbell is a good young player that we can just kind of thrust right into this defense. And maybe his tackling ability can kind of be contagious amongst the rest of the defenders in the backfield. And hopefully we can shore up our tackling and kind of get the fundamentals down. That way we can do our job this week come Sunday against a great Panthers team.
And our second piece of news, as Bron alluded to earlier, is Adrian Amos has been in the injury report 2 days in a row with a hamstring injury. He finished the game on Sunday, so it must have popped up either afterwards or during practice. But yeah, that's pretty important for the Packers defense if he's not able to go this Sunday.
Yeah, he's one of our best defenders, obviously. He's been a significant upgrade from what we had at that position last year. Just a very, very solid player, and he's worlds better than anything we've had in recent years. And, you hate to see a guy like him, really the heart and soul of our secondary right now, go down with an injury. Hopefully he's good to go this week, though, because, although Ibrahim Campbell is coming back, like we just talked about, you don't want to throw him into the fire right away and make him play significant snaps. You'd like to get him involved just a little bit. That way you can kind of get his groove into the game. But hopefully he's able to go, and our defense will be at full strength.
And lastly, it's a pretty slow news week over here, but it's snowing in Green Bay right now. It's pretty early in the year to be snowing, but it's snowing pretty hard, and the Packers are practicing out in those conditions. They're doing individual drills indoors, and then they're going outdoors for team drills. You know, with so many new players on the roster who have never played in Green Bay, some of them never even played in the cold, really, like Green Bay cold. It's pretty important to get their bodies used to playing football in cold weather and in the snow because we could be seeing these conditions on Sunday against the Panthers. It'll be fun to see a Green Bay snow game. We haven't seen that since the Texans game back in 2016, and this is actually our only home game in a 48-day time period, which is insane. Starting 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, 48 days from then, this is our only home game, including the bye week, but still, that's absurd. So when the schedule came out and we saw the majority of our home games at the beginning of the year, I was kind of thinking, wow, that kind of takes the advantage away from Lambeau Field. But with the snow starting this early in the year, this early in the year, it's pretty nice because we're gonna get that real Green Bay frozen tundra home field advantage, even though it's still early November.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be around a high of 35 on Sunday when we play the Panthers, and that weather, it's been good to us in the past 15 games. We've actually been 12-3 when Aaron Rodgers has started, when the kickoff temp is at 35 or below. And the Panthers have kind of struggled in that environment, although they haven't played very much in it. They're actually 2-5 in their last 7 games, and that's over the course of 15 years, where the temperature is at 35 or below. So yeah, it's looking like it could be that advantage for us against a team who really kind of struggles in that environment and hasn't seen much of it. So hopefully we can take advantage there, yeah. And it'd be a huge win for us if we could go out there and get a win against a perennial playoff team in the NFC and kind of put us back where we need to be in terms of our division and the NFC overall.
Yeah, but with that Aaron Rodgers stat, most of those games were kind of like with the for the most part the same group of guys, I feel like. So with how much roster turnover we've had, especially this past offseason, I am kind of worried about these guys' first game in real Green Bay frozen tundra conditions. Maybe they won't be used to it. We know Rodgers is going to be he's going to be on his A game because he's been in this before. But I don't know, guys like MVS, how reliable is he? He played in some games like this last year, but Zadarius Smith, he doesn't know anything about this. Amos, uh, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely that aspect where you're looking at, all these young guys that we had. I feel like there was last year that was kind of a similar situation where, half our team is like undrafted free agents and young guys, and we're kind of looking at Rodgers and a bunch of young guys out there. And you're wondering if that advantage is still there when these guys never really have that experience. But I think the fact that, like you alluded to before, that Matt LaFleur is kind of making them go out there and practice in these conditions, I think that should at least help. I think he's kind of trying to take that away and get these guys acclimated to the weather.
Yeah.
And that's going to be huge for us because even with these young guys out there, the guys like Zadarius Smith, I mean, in Baltimore, I'm sure he faced some cold for sure over there. Other guys have played there too. Like Preston Smith has played in some cold in Washington. He's had some rain games.
Not like this though. They don't know Green Bay cold when.
That's for sure. There's nothing like Green Bay cold. That's for sure.
And the Panthers, they can't simulate this. So we're practicing outdoors, getting ready for this weather with a bunch of guys who don't really know it. But the Panthers, there's no way they can simulate these conditions. So it should be an advantage outright.
And we're not sure how Kyle Allen's going to do in that cold either. I mean, a guy like Cam Newton, a big, strong guy, he's going to have a bit of an easier time in the cold. But we don't know how Kyle Allen's going to do, and we'll see how that goes this week.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to move into the really embarrassing loss to the Los Angeles Chargers last Sunday. The Packers were dominated over the course of 4 quarters. It was just painful to watch. What were your initial thoughts coming out of it?
Well, I remember watching the game, and I'm just, I'm sitting here, and we're halfway through the game, and we haven't even touched the ball yet. And it's just, you're thinking about it, and it's just like, wow, nobody has controlled the time of possession like the Chargers did against us. And, everybody always talks about, how do you defeat the Green Bay Packers? You keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. And at this point, it's keeping Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, keeping our whole offense off the field. And that was crucial for the Chargers. This was a must-win game for them. That was their season, really. And they've got to pretty much win almost every game going out here to contend in that AFC. But it was a tough loss because we could never get anything going, and even on offense, when it looked like we might have something going, a penalty took us back. And on defense, we did a good job of holding them to field goals early on, but then they kind of started breaking through in the second half, and we could never catch up to them. And it was kind of disappointing because we had done so well for the past 8 weeks in terms of moving the ball. And, even in our bad times moving the ball, it was never this bad. Early on when, the excuse was that we're getting a new offense, it really was never as bad as it was on Sunday. And our defense, it played better than it had in a couple of weeks prior, but still it wasn't good enough. And overall, we're not good enough. And that's just one of those games that you kind of have to move on from, and hopefully you can learn from it. And, we got to go win this next one now.
Yeah, you said it during the game. In the first quarter, the Chargers' opening drive, there were 7 minutes left in the first quarter, and they were still at like the 20. They were just entering the red zone. It was pretty insane. And I remember thinking, like, and I'm sure everyone did, like, is this going to be that type of game? We gotta respond to a drive like that, and we never did, and we never responded on defense because they kept having those lengthy drives with those multiple first downs every single drive, and they were just
they had the ball 12 minutes longer than we did. That's 12 minutes out of 60 they had the ball. I mean, they had the ball for a total of 36 minutes. I mean, that's really, it's just crazy how you can't expect to win football games when you don't have the ball as long as they had. And looking at the rest of our other games, we had the ball 30 plus minutes in every single game, apart from the Denver Broncos game. And the difference between the Broncos game and the Chargers game was we had 3 turnovers on defense. And that kind of won us that game. And when you don't have any turnovers on defense in a game where you only have the ball for 24 minutes, you're never going to win that kind of football game.
Yeah, and a lot of that stemmed from the fact that we only had 4 possessions in the entire first half. 4 possessions, and we obviously didn't score any points on those. I think we only had a few first downs all of the first half because we kept shooting ourselves in the foot with all these penalties. It was so frustrating because it felt like every time they lined up, you were just waiting for a pre-snap penalty, and we kept shooting ourselves in the foot, and we kept getting behind the sticks, and we couldn't recover. We could not recover from that.
It's just one of those games where everything went wrong. Like, you're looking at everything. I mean, even on the plays where we were having success, like you said, a penalty would put us behind, take away the play, or make it from a 2nd and 1 to a 2nd and 6, and then we can't convert in 3rd. And it's just like a whole thing where we just can't get the job done because everything's going wrong. We couldn't get turnovers on defense. You saw Jair Alexander. He had 2 chances to get picks, and he couldn't do it. Kevin King had a chance to get a pick, and he couldn't do it. I mean, just things were not going our way on Sunday. And it's just one of those where, like I said, you got to just kind of move past it and hope you can move on and kind of develop over the week, look at the things you did right and look at the things you did wrong. And I bet it was a lot of wrong this week, not much right, but you definitely have to kind of move on and just hopefully, prepare better this week. And like I said, this is a big game.
Yeah, just to kind of stay on the offense here. What the thing with the Matt LaFleur offense, his offensive philosophy is that every single play call is used to set up a play call later in the game. So when we're in a 2nd and 5 and he calls a specific play just to get 5 yards or 6 yards, because that's going to set up something later in the game. But when there's a false start, for example, and now it's 2nd and 10, LaFleur has to go to what he calls his back on track call sheet. And so then if that's incomplete, which it was almost every single time on 2nd and long, now it's 3rd and long, and the pass rushers can just tee off and they can just go hunt the quarterback, which they did. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa pretty much wrecked our entire offense. And so when you can never get those initial plays that are meant to set up plays in the second half was just as bad because it was just simple football. There was no game plan. LaFleur and Rodgers both said it after the game. They couldn't get to some of the things they wanted to, mainly because we only had 4 possessions in the first half, and all 4 of those drives were just killed by offensive penalties.
Yeah, and you talked about the offensive line a little bit. It just wasn't getting the job done. Every time Rodgers seemed like he needed to make a play, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram and the rest of that Chargers D-line just came running through and ended up getting him either pressured to where he couldn't make the right throw, or they ended up getting him for a sack. And that was all on key downs. And that, again, put us behind the sticks, in addition to the penalties we already got on that same drive. So it was really just a recipe for disaster against a team that we might have overlooked. I mean, they came in thinking, oh, this is a Packers home game. They came into LA 2 nights early. Rodgers talked about, maybe the offense wasn't focused, things like that. It's tough because you have to not overlook this team. Going into it, you have to remember they're playing good football this year, and they're just, they're within scores each and every loss. And they were 12-4 last year, and that's a good football team with a great quarterback, and they've got a great defense. Yeah, they're dealing with some injuries, but they're a great team, and we were just kind of overlooking them this week, and everything went wrong. But the offensive line did struggle. I mean, we couldn't even run the football. We couldn't pass protect, and with that, we weren't able to get anything going on offense.
I feel like the one thing we could have done better is in the second half, we were only down 9-0. The defense had not played well at all, but they had held down the red zone. They did not allow a touchdown, 3 field goals in a row. So I think the defense kept the offense in the game. But in the second half, it felt like we came out with the game plan of we need to score quickly. I don't know why. I wish we could have just kind of restarted the game there, because we could have scored 9 points. The defense wasn't playing terribly. They weren't playing terribly. They weren't losing the game for us. I don't know why we didn't come out the second half with the game plan we went into the game with. It felt like we were doing a lot of the spread stuff from the 15-minute mark in the third quarter. Aaron Jones only had 9 touches all game. That's an issue. He's a main feature of this offense. He's obviously so talented. He's proved it over the course of the season. I think we could have done a much better job featuring him, especially in the second half, because it seemed like we had the mentality of we were down 21-0 instead of 9.
I think the issue was that Mike Pettin thought that at some point we were going to be able to get going on offense. So that didn't stop him from, keeping that bend but don't break mentality on defense, allowing them to get field goals, because I think he believed that the offense was going to wake up. On the other side of the ball, I feel like Matt LaFleur was concerned that the defense was going to, stay on the field, and the Chargers offense was going to keep having those long drives. And I think that's why we came out in the second half trying to score quickly, because I feel like we both had contradicting philosophies to start the second half. I feel like it was where we're thinking that we have to score quickly because our defense isn't going to be able to hold up. They're going to keep the Chargers offense on the field too long. And I think that's where that was. But yeah, I feel like I said, everything just did not go right this week. And you're looking at contradicting thoughts and things like that kind of brought us down in the end. And we just weren't able to score enough points to even get back in the game, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great point, because going into halftime, we were being shut out, and I thought we were going to make some great halftime adjustments. That's been one of LaFleur's greatest qualities this season, is his halftime adjustments. But
right.
We didn't.
You're exactly right. You're talking about his game scripts to start the game, and then his second half scripts. That's where he's excelled, especially. You're right.
Yeah, and this week he just wasn't able to make the right calls. I mean, maybe that's an Aaron Rodgers issue too. Maybe it's a Mike Pettin issue too. But it seemed like everything that we do well, that we've done well this season, didn't work this week. Aaron Jones didn't get the ball enough, didn't play particularly well when he did have the ball. The offensive line, specifically pass protection, was pretty terrible, which has been pretty great all season. One of the best in the league. One of the best pass protecting lines in the league. Devontae Adams, he comes back, and they lock him up pretty well. He still got about 40 yards, but he wasn't the deep threat, the dynamic threat at receiver that we're used to seeing him being. Aaron Rodgers wasn't particularly sharp. And then LaFleur, I don't think he called a great game. I think this was probably his worst game of the season, which I don't think takes away from how successful he's been this season as a rookie head coach. But I think this is the most adversity. This is the most challenging game he's been in. And I don't think he responded well. So I think that's only natural for a rookie head coach to come across. And it's going to be important to see how he responds to that. But yeah, I thought everything that we're used to seeing this team do well didn't play well at all this week. And you can't win games when the main parts of your team don't play well.
Yeah, and it was kind of a similar way on defense where we were kind of starting off well, and I think we relied too much on our offense to get back into it. I don't think we made adjustments like you said. I kind of think we just relied on ourselves on both sides of the ball to just get back to what we've been doing all season long, and we just weren't able to do it. So it wasn't much of any adjustments that were made. It was more of the lack of, and I think that when we didn't make adjustments and we tried to get back to what we've been doing all season, and when we weren't able to do it, that kind of sunk us, I really feel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest adjustment we saw was in the fourth quarter when we were already down 3 scores because we just started playing pretty much like backyard football. It kind of looked like a Mike McCarthy offense, just, spread, everyone get open, Aaron throws to who's open. And we were rolling down the field. We scored our only touchdown of the game playing like that. But the Chargers were also playing very soft. It's not hard to score against a prevent defense and in garbage time. But
I think we needed that score because imagine, getting shut out in the red zone, like not scoring a touchdown. I think that would have done some damage to the locker room for sure. But when Rodgers was able to kind of move down the field nicely, get some throws to Jamal Williams, who actually had a really nice game on offense for us. Able to get that touchdown to him, and then Rodgers able to scramble for that 2-point conversion. That was kind of crucial, I think, just for the morale of the team overall. Just an encouraging kind of little score to get us moving into next week. Kind of bury that tape and just go forward, move on, and let's win a Panthers game. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think that's the only offense we could play in the second half because, like I said, in the first half, in this kind of offense, when you don't set up any plays, when you don't have anything for the defense to kind of key in on, you don't have any tendencies this game that you have to just straight up play very simple football. And we played it well, but the Chargers also weren't. It was garbage time. It was a garbage time touchdown. But yeah, I guess it is. No one wants to be shut out, right? Like a shutout can be pretty demoralizing for a team. But yeah, this is definitely a game that the Packers are hoping at least, and Packer fans are hoping was just an outlier, just a weird game. No one showed up, and this is definitely a game the Packers need to put behind them.
Yeah, definitely. And let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. I really think that we had trouble, stopping the run, and then when we weren't able to do that, the passing game kind of opened up for the Chargers, and they were able to kind of let loose and play their football game. And the guy I'm looking at this week, who we have to kind of examine here, is Blake Martinez. He's kind of struggled the last couple weeks, but he's dealing with some injuries. And Mike Pettin, we know he's doing him no favors by most of the time leaving him out there, by himself and sending pressure. And when we're not getting home or the running back's getting through that set of pressure in front and he's kind of left there by himself, he's not making those tackles right now. And from Ben Fennell on Twitter, we've got a good stat here for you. With one linebacker in the game, one middle linebacker, they had 27 carries for 146 yards with a 5.4 average. And two inside linebackers on the field, they had 11 carries for 13 yards with a 1.18 average. And I think that's going to relate to more B.J. Goodson this week because he's been a good run stopper for us. And I think if the Packers go in, see that film, and look at the fact that Blake Martinez by himself is not getting the job done, and we need to give him another guy there just to shore up the tackling in the run game. I think we'll be able to do that, and I think that'll help our run defense for sure. But what do you think about that whole situation, Griff?
I mean, Blake Martinez has always been kind of the most controversial player on the Packers defense. He's been that way for a while now. I've been of the opinion that I think a lot of people put too much stock in his amount of tackles. He's always amongst the league leaders in tackles. He's leading the league right now in tackles. But I've always thought tackles are a very overrated stat, and you cannot take them seriously, especially when assessing the value of an inside linebacker. But I've always noted that he's been reliable in the run game. That's been his strong suit. He's a run defending inside linebacker, and we all know he's susceptible in the pass game. He's not reliable in zone or man coverage, but he's always been very reliable in the run game. He's not anymore, or this season at least. He's playing poorly against the run, and when you're a liability and the only thing you're good at, you become a liability as a player. And I think he's been that this season. I think he's been very underwhelming. I think he needs to play a lot better. I think he's the reason for a lot of our deficiencies as a defense. I think a lot of the yards we give up are because of him, whether that be by missed tackles or blown assignments or bad reads in the run game. I just think we need to see a lot better from him.
I think at his best, he's a good player, even a great player. I mean, he's our play caller on defense. He's our captain. He's really our leader. And I do think he can play better. He's dealing with a hand injury right now that's kind of making it tougher for him to tackle with that hand. And he had that cast on his hand and the bubble over his hand. I think obviously that makes it tougher for him to make tackles like that. But yeah, you've seen him kind of struggle these past couple weeks. I don't know. It's tough to assess that kind of thing. I mean, he's really been pedestrian this year in the passing game. He can't cover anybody right now. But at the same time, he's got to really account for both the run and the pass on every play because he's kind of out there by himself the majority of the time. So he's kind of got to account for the running back coming out of the backfield, a tight end in line coming out, and he's kind of do that all by his own. Will Redmond is there sometimes to, cover guys, but at the same time, he's letting guys loose as well. So I think between, that second middle linebacker or that nickel linebacker or whoever's there beside Blake or whoever's supposed to help him in that aspect, that partnership isn't working. And like we talked about, Mike Pettin's really not helping him at all there. Maybe we'll see that change this week. Maybe Blake is able to kind of just sit back and prepare to tackle the running back and kind of prepare to play the run game. And that way he can either sit and spy on the quarterback or just prepare for a guy like McCaffrey to come out of the backfield or just prepare for him to run up the middle or whatever the case may be instead of having to kind of look towards the tight ends, any inline receiver, whatever the case is. I just think he's being asked to do a lot right now, and he's not prepared to do that with this kind of injury that he's got. So hopefully he kind of gets back on track and becomes that player that we all know he can be this season. And he is leading the league in tackles, but that is a little misleading. So hopefully he just gets back to the level that we know he can play at, and it'll be a tough matchup against a guy like McCaffrey this week. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've kind of thought maybe the hand is the reason that he's playing poorly. But it's not even that he's missing tackles. It's that he's taking bad angles and he's making bad reads in the run game, which has nothing to do with your hand, obviously, because he's pretty reliable when he's in position to make a tackle. But he's usually not in those positions, at least this season.
But yeah,
I think that's been the main issue with
him.
him.
I'm talking about. I really do think that he's getting asked to do a lot. He's getting asked to look at a lot as the play caller and captain of the defense. Kind of making sure everybody else is doing their job while he's trying to do his job at the same time. And he's being asked to do a lot of different jobs. So it might be a little too much on his plate, and I can definitely understand that when he's kind of like that sole middle linebacker for about 2/3 of the game. So it's tough for him right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we have kind of an open competition at the second inside linebacker spot between B.J. Goodson and Oren Burks because they share snaps. They split snaps. There's no consistency there.
Oren Burks really isn't getting enough snaps. I mean, I don't know what that has to do with. Maybe he's not reliable enough in the run game. But, I mean, he's a much better pass defender than both Blake and B.J. Goodson. And
I think Penton...
When you have a guy like B.J. Goodson next to Blake Martinez, and they're kind of really similar players, both really aren't sufficient in the passing game, and guy Oren Burks behind them who is, it's tough because if he's only getting 8 snaps a game, and that was his high of the season last week, 8 snaps, I mean, that's tough because then you have guys like Will Redmond trying to cover tight ends, and that's just not working for us right now.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see Burks a little more, but I think Petton's trying to kind of make him take Goodson's job because Goodson's played well. He hasn't been terrible. It's not like we need Burks in because Goodson's a liability. Goodson's been playing well. He's not good in the pass game, like you said, where that's kind of Burks' strong suit, but I think that's Petton's kind of easing him in back into the fold because he was injured at the beginning of the year, and he's trying to they're definitely splitting snaps. It's kind of like a competition to me, it seems like. It feels like a training camp preseason kind of open competition for the spot.
Well, on the bright side of all this, this is a contract year for Blake Martinez, and a lot of people were concerned that he might price himself out of Green Bay with our limited cap space going into next season. But, he might just be able to take a kind of a friendly deal for us if he's not getting any suitors off his play. I mean, we're kind of in a tough spot come next year. If Oren Burks doesn't get better and Blake Martinez, if he leaves or whatever the case may be, we definitely need to look at some options there for sure.
Yeah, I don't think at this point he's earned a a large contract from any team. Maybe there's a team dumb enough to give him an elite kind of contract, but he hasn't earned that in my opinion. I think he's earned a hometown discount contract, which maybe he will take without any other hefty offers on the board. But yeah, we'll see.
But apart from Blake, I mean, the defense itself, it was better than the last couple of weeks, like we've said, but definitely still work to be done. Hopefully, when we get a guy like we talked about, Ibrahim Campbell back in the fold, maybe that'll help the tackling aspect of the defense. But yeah, just you saw once again Kevin King and Jair Alexander both had pretty rough games, and we've talked about a couple times how we're kind of looking for both of those guys to play really well in the same game, and that's yet to happen this season. And that kind of puts the defense in a tough spot. And, because we're really struggling right now in a lot of different parts of the defense and the run defense especially, and that's kind of, pinning everybody back and making it difficult for everybody. So, I don't know. What'd you think of the defensive performance this week, Griff?
I was pretty disappointed in our defensive performance, really. I don't know how much I can trust this defense, honestly, especially after this week. Last week on the podcast, I spent a whole segment talking about how the performance against the Chiefs wasn't on their end. It was just Andy Reid being great, a very talented Chiefs team. And I kind of said that they'll recover. And I don't know if I can believe that anymore, because we got worked by the Raiders the week before that, and we got worked again by a Chargers team with a brand new offensive coordinator. I think this defense is giving up way too many explosive plays. They've given up the most 40-yard plus plays in the NFL. And I don't think you can rely on that. Sure, they buckle down in the red zone, and they're one of the best red zone defenses in the league, but I think when we face a really good team in the playoffs, I don't think that's going to hold up. I think we need to make some adjustments. I think we need to figure out who our starters are on defense, because there's a lot of rotating guys. We saw Tony Brown and Kevin King splitting snaps this week. No idea what that was about. And then, like I said, the second inside linebacker spot, we don't know whose that is. We can't seem to find a package we want to stay in. We switch between base, nickel, and dime a lot.
Yeah, we've got a lot of rotating guys in that nickel package, whether it's Shannon Sullivan, Will Redmond, and now Ibrahim Campbell entering the mix. We do have a lot of moving parts, and that's kind of what we kind of looked at as like a strength of ours, but it's kind of making it a little difficult to find a flow. And
yeah, they're not all mixing together very well. We haven't found a real core.
Yeah, and we're kind of still looking for our identity on defense. Like, it's been bend but don't break so far. And Mike Pettin came out and he said that, we're not going to be a bend but don't break defense anymore, because he doesn't think it might not be working anymore for us. So it's important to kind of find our identity, but at the same time, it'd be nice to be able to bend and not break, but also maybe we got to come out and be more aggressive this week, where we can have multiple identities, multiple ways to win on defense. I think that's going to be key moving forward. We can't just go into a game with this identity anymore. It's got to be multiple identities, multiple ways to win, and that's going to get the offense the ball, and that's how we're going to have to start winning games.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating seeing all these incompetent offenses just drive down the field against us. Any quarterback, it feels like, is able to have good games against us. How many games in a row have we given up quarterback ratings of 100 plus? It feels like every single quarterback plays well. Every quarterback feels too comfortable, in my opinion. We have only 10 sacks in the last 6 games. Since week 3, our pass rush hasn't really been that great. The 2 Smiths have been great, but it's not really reliable. Teams are getting the ball out quick on us, and it's working because we play so aggressive.
And we're not creating turnovers anymore either.
Yeah, the turnovers stopped too.
The reason we were winning games is because we're able to create turnovers, win the turnover battle, and that's how we've been winning games. Our offense is doing just enough to get us by, while the turnovers are giving them the ball in good spots. But when we're not creating turnovers, the offense isn't moving, and the defense isn't getting significant stops throughout the entire game. That's a recipe for a loss each and every week. So it's going to be tough to kind of do the things we want to do when none of the 3 aspects of football, not to mention how bad we've been playing on special teams, but when we're not getting turnovers, we're not playing well on offense, and we're not playing well on defense, we're never going to win football games that way.
Yeah, and we don't really talk a lot about special teams on this podcast because we're not particularly great at them. We're pretty terrible at them. But a good some good stats from Matt Schneidman earlier this week. The Packers have -8 total punt return yards on the season. That's a total punt return yards, -8. Our long punt return is 1 yard. We're averaging -1.3 per return. That is unbelievably bad.
Yeah, and that's a short telling story about how bad we've been on special teams. You thought after firing Ron Zook that we were going to improve because there's no way we could get worse. Well, so far that's not seemed to be the case. And whether that's just because we've lost guys, we lost guys like James Crawford, Trevor Davis, who were significant special teamers for us, or whether that's just maybe Sean Menenga's not the guy that we needed. We definitely are not in the right spot, and we've just really struggled on special teams all season. Apart from Mason Crosby, who's been excellent this year, and J.K. Scott, who's played really well, our return game has been atrocious, and that's an understatement because we've been filtering guys in and out each and every week. We don't have a set guy there, and our punt and kick coverage has been quite abysmal, honestly. It's just tough because we can't do anything in either return game on defense or offense. So, hopefully Tremont Smith is good enough to get the job done, returning punts and kicks for us. He seemed to have a nice game last week, apart from a couple returns where I would have liked him to just let the ball go. But he did have one nice return that went to about the 35. If we can get a consistent return game where we're getting it above the 25-yard line, I mean, that's all you can ask for, really. And on punt returns, it's kind of the thing where we gotta start double teaming the gunners. I mean, Sean Menenga talked about today about how he kind of thought that it was best to leave them, one-on-one. He expects guys to win those one-on-one battles, and then that way he can avoid the fake punt situation. But it's tough because really, how often are our teams going to fake punt against us compared to our ability to get better position on offense? So I think it's more important that we double team our gunners here and kind of make sure we can get as much field position advantages as we can throughout the game, kind of help the special teams, help the defense, help the offense. That way our rotating 3 cycles of football help us win the football game.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying that we regret trading Trevor Davis, which I think we do, but it's not a returner issue. It's definitely a blocking issue, like we said, on these punt returns, because these returners have nowhere to go. The guys are in their face immediately. So I don't think we can just pin this on the returner. I think the whole operation is a mess. And I don't know if I'd say it's worse than last year's special teams under Ron Zook, because last year's special teams was a kind of bad where every single return or punt or kickoff was a penalty or a turnover. It's not like that. We're not making any plays, but we're not harming our team. You know what I mean? We're doing just enough to get by.
Yeah, definitely. I just think, I mean, we're 7-2, so it's not hindering our team in any significant way where it's like we have to do something different. We have to change our coach or anything like that. But definitely we have to get better if we want to make a playoff run, because when you're starting to, get to the playoffs, what separates these teams is, can you play football in all 3 phases of the game? And, that really starts with special teams. That's the biggest separator, because a team like the Patriots is going to be a completely perfect special teams, team. And a team like the Green Bay Packers right now, not playing well enough to beat them in all 3 phases. And that's what you have to do in the playoffs, win all 3 phases of the game. And, we're going to hopefully improve in that aspect if we get some more consistency with like our returning, and hopefully we can make that adjustment. He talked about it today, like I said. Maybe he makes that adjustment, but if not, hopefully we can just play better.
Yeah, and speaking of the playoffs, this Sunday might be an early preview of a playoff game, potentially, maybe. The Carolina Panthers are coming to Green Bay, the 5-3 Carolina Panthers.
The Cam Newton-less Carolina Panthers, 5-3.
Yes. Cam Newton is on injured reserve, hasn't been playing since week 2. Kyle Allen has been playing in his spot, and he's been playing not well, but not bad either. He's been a very much so a game manager, but that whole offense is definitely Christian McCaffrey. He is playing unbelievable football. Every single week, he is just dominating his opponent. And against a team like the Packers, who definitely struggles versus the run, definitely struggles versus running backs, it's kind of scary to think about what he might be able to do this Sunday.
Yeah, he's been nearly unstoppable, I would say, and he's really the only non-quarterback that's in the MVP conversation. And really, that's a quarterback's award. That tells you how dominant he's been this year. And behind a not so great offensive line with a not so great quarterback and not so great weapons around them, he's just been the absolute star of that football team. And he really accounts for all 5 of their wins. He's just been that impressive, and he's going to be a really tough guy to solve this week. And I bet the defense is struggling to figure out that puzzle right now.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's lately been kind of critical of Mike Pettin, I said last week I feel like he's kind of outmatched every time he's facing a competent offensive weapon or offensive mind, OC quarterback, whatever it may be. I feel like he's not up to the task, but we need him to be this week. We need him to have a plan for Christian McCaffrey. He cannot go into this game with the same game plan we've had this season, because we haven't been able to stop average running backs. I don't even want to think about what Christian McCaffrey would be able to do against us in our dime defense with only 2 D linemen and only 1 linebacker. We need to play heavier this week for sure.
Yeah, and
But
that might not happen because Mike Pettin talked about it. He kind of doesn't want to be that bend but don't break defense. But if we want to win this football game, we might have to make Kyle Allen throw against us. And the only way we do that is like we say every week, we got to get out, come out with a big lead, and I think we got to score early. And we've talked about it recently, but I think we have to stop deferring on kickoffs. That's just not the team that we are anymore. We can't go and not get the ball to start the game. The key to winning for us every week is going to be getting a lead. That way our defense can pin its ears back up front and our secondary can relax knowing that they're going to have to throw the ball each and every time. And that's what we have to do. Take McCaffrey out of the game by making the Panthers throw it. And that's what we have to do.
yeah, that's the thing I just thought about though, as I was talking about playing heavier, because he's not just a threat in the running game. He's very much a threat in the passing game. We've seen it this year. They use him everywhere in that offense. So if we do play heavier, if we have BJ Goodson on the field a lot, like we alluded to earlier, that's going to be something that North Turner is definitely going to take advantage of. And it would just be easy. So it's such a hard team to game plan against with that
Yeah.
kind of weapon.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who's going to go out there and guard him on passing downs where he's going to get out of the backfield? I mean, is it Adrian Amos? I like that matchup, I think, out of anybody else. I don't like Darnell Savage because he kind of struggled last week at times in coverage as well. And actually, the last 2 weeks, he's had a couple rough games. But I think Amos is probably our best option in terms of covering him consistently. But you're probably going to see Blake out there on him. Maybe Oren Burks if he gets any playing time, which that's not a bad matchup for us. But really, there's no good matchups against a guy like Christian McCaffrey. He's really just unbelievable. It's going to be tough against him and a great Panthers scheme, really, that just decides that we're going to give him the ball and utilize him to the best of their ability.
And it's been working. They've proven they don't need any kind of superstar at quarterback, because Kyle Allen is not one. He's not even a good quarterback, I don't think, but he does just enough. He does what's asked of him, and he does it well. That offense has been rolling all season, so it's going to be a tough test.
Yeah, and you even look at some of the games they've lost, and he's still dominating. He gets his touches, he gets his yards, and he's scoring at a very consistent level. He's got at least 1 touchdown in every game except for the couple weeks ago game against Tampa Bay. So he's definitely going to be tough to stop, like we said. But let's talk about that passing game in Carolina. You're looking at a guy, Kyle Allen, who's kind of replaced Cam Newton. He's been good enough for them to kind of be patient with Cam Newton's rehab, and he's been good enough for them to even put Cam Newton on IR and kind of punt on his chances to play again. I mean, they're sitting at a 5-3 record after a rough start to their season. And, Cam Newton, he's been dealing with injuries over the course of the last 2 seasons. And this was kind of the final straw for them. And Kyle Allen, rookie, he's done a good job for them. And they're winning again. And that's really all they wanted to do, just start winning again, because they've kind of got the recipe down now. And it's just Kyle Allen kind of manages the game, like you said. Let Ron Rivera get the ball to Christian McCaffrey, and they're going to play good defense as well.
Yeah, the Panthers passing game is definitely not what they're best at. They don't have a ton of weapons. They got DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, who are good enough guys. Greg Olsen, the veteran, he's a reliable tight end. But That's definitely not where they thrive on offense, especially with Kyle Allen at quarterback. So I don't think the weapons are going to be too much for us, especially with the talent we have on defense. But like you said, it should definitely be a game where we force Kyle Allen to beat us, whether just erase Christian McCaffrey from the game. That's impossible. I know it's much easier said than done, but whatever we can do to make him as much of a non-factor as possible, we need to do. And no one's been able to do that this season. So it's a definitely tough task for Mike Pettin, definitely tough task for the Packers defense. But let's move on to our offensive matchup this week against the Panthers defense. I think we can definitely get back on track this week against the Panthers. Their rush defense, according to Football Outsiders, is 32nd in the league, worse than the entire NFL. So maybe this is a week Aaron Jones.
They're allowing 5.1 yards per carry, and that's the same rate they're actually running it with McCaffrey. So that's quite telling.
Yeah, this can be a week where we get Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams back in the mix, get them a lot of touches. You know what happens when you run the ball well? Your play action game works better. So maybe this is a week where Devontae Adams has a really solid game. It's kind of a comeback game because we didn't see that against the Chargers. So I think this definitely has the opportunity to be a get-right game for the offense, and I think it will be.
Yeah, I definitely think our offense is going to be laser-focused this week going into practice, and I think it starts with our offensive line. I know they're disappointed in how they've been playing, especially last week, and I think they know that it's time to kind of pony up, do a little bit better, and do a better job, and those guys are going to play as well as they have in the past, and you know, when they're on, they're going to be one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, if not the best, so I think this week is a good opportunity against a good Panthers rush, good Panthers pass rush. I think they have a good chance to kind of silence the doubters, you know, and help the offense out. And hopefully we can come out with a win and perform better on offense. And this is a good opportunity for sure.
Yeah, this would be huge. It's a huge game going into the bye week. It got flexed to a 4:25 time slot. It's going to be the Fox game of the week. Everyone's going to be watching. And maybe this can be a game that our defense gets back on track.
Yeah, and even after a decent performance, decent enough last week where they were able to get some stops early on against a lot of Chargers weapons on offense, I definitely think that they're going to get ready to kind of laser focus in and stop, you know, a team that really doesn't have all the weapons in the world, but it does have that one guy, Christian McCaffrey. And if they laser focus in on what they've got to do, what they've got to stop, and what they have to be, I think they can definitely have a huge impact on the game and let the offense kind of get back to where it needs to be as well.
What do you think for a final score of this game, Bron?
This is going to be a tough prediction. I'm going to say 27-21. We just kind of edge it out a little bit. Just a bit of a get-back game where we get back on track, but still a close game because you got to respect how good the Panthers are, and they're an NFC team. They've beaten us quite a few times in the past. So I'm definitely thinking that it's going to be a close game.
Put me down for 34-24. I think it'll be close throughout, but maybe towards the end we start kind of chewing the clock in the fourth quarter, something like that. Score some extra field goals and extend that to a 10-point lead. But yeah, a win this week would be huge because you never want to enter the bye week with a loss. It changes the whole kind of aura in the building. If you enter the bye week, you have to sit on a loss the entire week. So a win here would be huge.
Yeah, at 7-3, you're looking at, well, we just lost 2 games in a row, and we're going into the game against the 49ers.
Yeah.
Where the 49ers know, you know, Matt LaFleur learned his entire offense from basically alongside that Kyle Shanahan head coach down there in San Francisco. So, I mean, losing this game, it would put us in a tough spot because, you know, imagine we lose this week and then lose against the 49ers after the bye. We're 7-4, and all of a sudden we're fighting again for a playoff spot, and that's just not where we want to be. So hopefully we can get this one.
Yeah, that's the last. I'm getting anxious even thinking about that. Thinking about being 7-3 in the bye, and then going to San Francisco, who may still be undefeated at the time. They got a tough matchup with Seattle this week, but yeah, a win here is so important. 8-2 into the bye is so much better than 7-3 because you think you need at least 12 wins to get a bye in the playoffs?
Yeah, this game is a really crucial one because it could be one of the separating points of, you know, whether we're a team trying to get into the playoffs or we're looking for a bye. And, you know, let's say we win this game. We go into the bye week this next coming week. Then look at the San Francisco 49ers. If we go and beat them, then we're talking about a chance at a bye because, the Niners are 8-0, but they have a lot of tough matchups. They actually have the toughest second half schedule to face this for the rest of the season. So they definitely have to come out and beat some real teams here. So they could finish around 10-6 if things start to spiral backwards. And we definitely need to get as many wins as possible to hopefully kind of get a chance at a bye, get a chance at home field advantage, December, Lambeau, January football, where it's going to be cold, possibly snowing. And that's crucial. So every win matters, especially down the stretch coming here. And this home win against the Panthers definitely is important.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a good game this Sunday. It should be. It's very important in terms of our playoff chances and our seeding chances in the NFC. But to close out the pod, we're just going to answer some fan questions from you guys that I asked for on my story a couple days ago. This one here from @MattScottGreen. How do you see this last half of our schedule going down?
That's a great question. The rest of the NFC North actually has quite an interesting schedule, down this last half stretch. You're looking at, for the Packers, this Carolina game is huge, obviously, then the bye, and then that goes into the San Francisco game in San Francisco, then an away game at the Giants, then a home game versus the Redskins, home game versus Chicago, and then 2 away games against Minnesota and Detroit, respectively, to round out the year. And, you look at the games that we should win on there, automatic, give me those games, are the Giants and the Redskins. And that's 2 wins right there. And I think after that, that puts us at 9 wins, 9-2. Carolina, we should win that game for sure. I really think we could win this home game this week. Then the bye, San Francisco is going to be a tough one, right? You look at that game, and it's a game against a currently undefeated team. But, we've talked about it. Maybe Matt LaFleur, the apprentice, can kind of defeat the master in Kyle Shanahan, and maybe we come out with a win there. Who knows? But really, any of those remaining games, San Francisco, Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, those are all winnable. We can win those games. I mean, we've defeated teams that are better than a lot of those teams, and we've defeated actually Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit. We've already beaten those teams. So really, the only tough one that we might not come out with a win is the 49ers. And obviously divisional games, those can always go either way. But if we play our best football, we can defeat every team on this schedule.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I think the toughest games are in the conference. I think our 3 toughest games we have remaining are this week against Carolina, after the bye going into San Fran, and then it's got to be in Minnesota. We haven't won in that building since it's been open, since in 2016. We haven't won there.
Rodgers is still looking for revenge from that 2017 injury to the collarbone in that stadium.
Yeah, it's always going to be a tough place to play. It is for every team in the NFL. It's so loud in there. So that's going to be a huge game. That's what, week 16?
Yes.
That's week 16, yeah. So that's going to be a huge game because you'd think by then us in Minnesota are still going to be neck and neck in terms of the NFC North race. So that's going to be huge. And then this week against Carolina, coming off of a brutal loss versus the Chargers, is so important going into the bye. And then the one in San Fran, I feel like a lot of fans have kind of chalked that up as a loss. I don't know. The 49ers, who have they played? They haven't played anyone really impressive. They've obviously played well against every inferior opponent.
The Rams, I would say, right? You look at their schedule.
Yeah.
Beaten a lot of bad teams, but their best win was against their in-division rival in the Rams.
They look great in that game too.
Looking at their schedule, they still have to play the Seahawks twice, the Rams again, the Saints, the Packers. I mean, they've got a really tough schedule. The Ravens. So, like we talked about, that bye is still up for grabs for us, and it definitely starts by winning as many games as possible. But looking at actually the Minnesota Vikings, really our only true competitor for the division title this year. They've got some tough games, and those tough games are in primetime games, and that's where Kirk Cousins seems to come out and struggle. And those are against Dallas, Seattle, and actually LAC, the Chargers, and the Packers. Those are 4 games that's going to be tough for them to come out and win. I mean, they've got a tougher schedule than I think the rest of the NFC North for sure. They still have to play Detroit, Chicago, the Packers, like we said, the Chargers. Denver is a game that they're going to probably come out and win. That's at home for them. So, but yeah, Dallas this week is where we're going to really see whether they are a true contender in the NFC North or not. It's at Dallas. It's a primetime game, and this is really going to separate them from the rest of the NFC, or it's going to put them back in the fold with the Bears, the Lions, and the rest of the lower class.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of questions that are going to be answered coming up. But this next question here, if we also lose to the Panthers, do you begin to view this team differently? We said it earlier. If we go into the bye on a 2-game losing streak, yeah, I think it's only natural to view this team differently than we did early on in the season when we were 3-0 or even 6-1, 7-1 after the Chiefs game. Especially, it depends on how we look. If we look terrible again on offense and the defense gives up a lot of yards, then yeah, it's not gonna be a good week, that bye week, that whole week of sitting on a 2-game losing streak. But I think if we do lose this game, I'm definitely gonna be seeing this team differently. I think I'm gonna have a lot of questions about this team. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, questions. There'd be a lot of questions, but at the same time, you're thinking about maybe those questions just were answered. Maybe we're not as good of an offensive team or defensive team or whatever the case may be. But I think even if we lose this game, let's say we come out, kind of get back on track. And, the Panthers are a tough team. They obviously, we talked about Christian McCaffrey, ad nauseum. But definitely going to be a tough one this week. And if we lose, I mean, we have the bye week. We can always come out, okay, we're 7-3. Let's say we go into the bye week and then beat maybe the best team in the NFC, regarded by some people, the 49ers. That changes everything as well. So it's a week-to-week league. Any given Sunday, all the cliches you can throw in there. But obviously, you saw the Packers at 4-6, come back, go 10-6, run the table. Anything can happen in the league. So I'm not sure I'd be too concerned if we lost, but definitely wouldn't be something I'd be thrilled with,
All right, a couple more here. This one from @thegamingpanda3. What is the Packers' weakest position? Inside linebacker, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be that or interior D line outside of Kenny Clark. I think Kenny Clark being in that group kind of raises them up as a position, but outside of Kenny, we got not a lot of players there. Dean Lowry's been okay in some games this season, but yeah, inside linebacker and interior D line would be my answers there.
Well, to me, that question there's a similar question you can ask, and it's, what position do we have the most questions at? And for me, that's middle linebacker, that's inside linebacker. Obviously, Blake Martinez, he's been our guy for the past few years, but, even his play is coming into question. And then that second guy, we don't have that true second guy yet that can play alongside him. And maybe that's why we're running a lot of one man in the middle. Maybe it's because we don't have that second guy that deserves to be on the field as much. So that's definitely the one for me where we have the most questions, and I would say that's probably our weakest position.
All right, last one here. This one's kind of fun. From @ThePackerNation, friend of the show. Who's your least favorite fan base?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many. Do we have time?
I would go Vikings, without a doubt. I cannot stand them.
Cowboys, Vikings, Seahawks, Bears, Lions.
Cowboys get a bad rep. I don't see a lot of bad Cowboys fans.
Well, okay, they're true fans, yeah. They have a lot of casual fans, like the Packers, all these.
Like the Patriots,
Giants,
yeah.
Patriots, right? They have a lot of casual fans, and they're true fans. A lot of teams' true fans are not bad, but you've got a lot of casual fans that kind of cloud the judgment of the rest of the league. So it's definitely difficult to assess that kind of thing. But then again, when you're talking about which is the worst fan base, you're probably thinking what team has the most casual fans that kind of give them that bad rep. So that's a whole different discussion, I feel like. But yeah, I would say it's those teams like the Vikings who kind of celebrate Aaron Rodgers' injuries and things like that. That's kind of disappointing. That's when that fan base it's just a rough fan base. Because I remember we were really giving them a lot of sympathy when Teddy Bridgewater went down just a couple of years prior. And, a lot of them are coming out and celebrating Aaron Rodgers' injury when we're 4-1. That was disappointing. So I would say probably the Vikings is definitely up there.
Yeah, I would go Vikings they were so bad before the 2018 season when they went 13-3. That entire offseason was unbearable with the Vikings fans. And even when they're bad, they're still annoying. Bears fans, when the Bears are bad, I don't really see a lot of annoying Bears fans. I mean, when they're good, they're annoying. That's only natural. But Vikings fans are just, ugh, I can't stand. And then Patriots fans, and really
Patriots
only
fans are
because of
probably, you know what? Patriots fans are probably the most annoying. I would say them.
it really comes down to the Brady Rodgers debate because both fan bases, they probably cannot stand us either, but both fan bases kind of make everything Brady's Rodgers things, especially
Yeah,
the more casual sides of it.
yeah, definitely. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. We'll have Mason back next week, the full trio, and hopefully we get a win here against the Panthers. You can follow me on Instagram at Lambo Leapers. You can follow Griff on Instagram and Twitter at All Day Packers. And we'll see you next week. Go Pack Go.